A conservative journalist from the New York Post named Seth Lipsky penned an article actually defending the DNC's decision to rig the Democratic primary against Bernie Sanders, and he also commended them for doing it. But before we get to that, I want to send a huge shout out to We the People for sponsoring this segment of the Humanist Report. So We the People has quickly become one of my favorite applications for news about the presidential election, and I've been checking it every morning because they actually put all the news articles about the presidential race as well as tweets from the presidential candidates all into one place. And it's particularly valuable to me because they actually include news stories about third-party presidential candidates. And what's cool is that you can vote for the candidate who you'll be supporting and then see which candidate has the most support in your area. There's also a discussion section, so that way you can debate others and discuss political topics anonymously, so that way you don't have to make any more enemies with your friends and family members on Facebook like I've done. So head on over to the iOS or Android store and download this app so that way we can fill up the heat map with more support for Jill Stein. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into Lipsky's article. So he states, "In the great Bernie Sanders battle, I'm with her. Not Hillary Clinton, though I'm not a Hillary hater. In the fight that's ripping the Democratic Party down the middle, the her I'm with is Debbie Wasserman Schultz." That might seem surprising from a right-wing newspaper editor, but as I've written before, I'm sorry to see Wasserman Schultz forced from the chairmanship of the Democratic National Committee. Now, you'd think that as a right-winger, you would be sad to see someone go who was very bad to the Democratic Party and who turned away the base because that helps your candidate get elected. But that's not the case. He actually likes Debbie Wasserman Schultz because of her hardline stance on Israel. Now, he says, "The victor in the leaked email drama, Sanders," wrong, "has made it his business to move the party away from Israel. His nominees to the DNC Platform Committee included Professor Cornel West and pro-Palestinian activist James Zogby, two of the most committed anti-Israel activists in the party. No wonder aides to Wasserman Schultz at the Democratic National Committee were trying to rig the primaries against Sanders." First of all, Bernie Sanders wasn't the victor of the DNC leak. He was the victim. Because if you don't remember, the rigging that they did against him cost him the election. And furthermore, you honestly are telling me that you believe that disagreement on the Israel-Palestine conflict is good enough cause to just completely subvert democracy? Are you really telling me that right now? And think about how unreasonable he's being. How dare Bernie Sanders have a perfectly moderate stance on Israel and actually condemn their illegal occupation of Palestine and their war crimes against civilians in Gaza, and he also hates his support for the Iran nuclear deal? How dare he? Someone that disagrees with me, you know what? We need to completely violate democracy because I disagree with this person. That is the antithesis of democracy. So if you want to go live in an authoritarian country, there are many to choose from. Have at it. But in a democracy, we don't rig things against people who we disagree with. We have a debate about it and we elect people to represent our views. So you are completely wrong and unethical. It's anti-democratic. Your argument by definition is undemocratic. Now, this journalist also referenced the DNC leak again, and he had a little quote in there saying, "In an interview with Marxist website Democracy Now!" Okay, you just completely discredited yourself by saying that Democracy Now! Of all news organizations is Marxist. How about this? Rather than calling everything that you don't like Marxist or disagree with Marxist, how about you go take Political Science 101 and then come back and we can have a discussion about Marxism and what you agree and disagree with, right? But this completely immature and just factually inaccurate declaration that Democracy Now! Of all places is Marxist is honestly just embarrassing to yourself. Now, he continues by saying, "It looks more and more like Wasserman Schultz and Clinton were right to fight against the socialist attempts to take over the party, but wrong to try to appease them at the platform committee and convention. The net is that this campaign looks destined to be the one in which the Democrats complete their long goodbye to the principles of Harry Truman, John F. Kennedy, and Bill Clinton. The Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, hardcore leftists are in league with Julian Assange, exacting their price." So let's reiterate what he's actually claiming here. Not only is he saying that the DNC was correct to rig the primary against Bernie Sanders, but after rigging it, he's saying that they didn't even need to offer us any concessions. Completely give us the middle finger even more than they already did, which were bullshit concessions, by the way, because they did change the party platform, but they did it because they wanted Bernie Sanders to drop out and endorse Hillary. So they didn't make the party platform more progressive because they're just progressive. They did it for I think, a tactical reason, which is very smart. Some people will fall for that, but not many Bernie Sanders supporters, because that's absolutely bullshit. A party platform doesn't mean much at the end of the day, because they're going to go back on it the minute they get into office. So here's the thing. Why don't you just be honest about the fact that you hate democracy? You don't believe in democracy. You believe in authoritarianism. So you want to live in a country where opposition is silenced and elections are rigged against people who you disagree with. Again, go live in Russia. Go live in a country where opposition is actually silenced. Now, here's the thing about that. You shouldn't want that. You shouldn't want to live in a country where your political opposition is silenced. You should fight for their right to freedom of speech and to have the views that they have. Because what if it were you in their shoes? What if we disagreed with you wanting to rip up the Iran deal, which we do? But what if we said that you shouldn't have a voice in this election because of that stance? You're so unreasonable that you shouldn't even have a say. We should rig the election against you. That would be wrong. And as someone who defended Donald Trump, who dislikes Donald Trump, when the RNC was planning to do some shenanigans at their convention and hand the nomination over to Mitt Romney, I defended Donald Trump, even though he's the last person on the planet I want to be president of the US. That's because you either have to take a stand for democracy or go live in an authoritarian country. We're not hardcore leftists, we're FDR Democrats. We are where the party once was. We are where the Democratic electorate actually is. Look at the public opinion polls. Almost every single issue, voters side with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on. So you can't tell me that we're hardcore leftists. You're a hardcore right-winger and you're against democracy. So congratulations, you just made a fool of yourself.